Good afternoon from Sydney, Australia. If you're watching this recorded, maybe good evening or good morning. My name is Trevor Dornbos, and I'm from Aprika Business Solutions, the owners and creators of Mission Control, professional services automation, project management, and resource management. And today we're going to be going through managing waterfall projects as well as agile projects using Mission Control. There is a Q&A function available on the webinar as well as a webinar chat. If you do have any questions, please feel free just to post them there. If you do raise your hand, I might be able to actually see that. Happy to sort of deep dive as required. I'm going to go through the whys of mission control, what sort of companies and industries use mission control, and then into the demo. So a quick history on mission control. So mission control as an application has been around for 12 years on Salesforce App Exchange, was built from the ground up as a Salesforce application. So if you are using Salesforce today, it's very easy to install into your Salesforce org. If you're not using Salesforce today, then we can certainly talk to you about running Salesforce and mission control. The company Aprika Business Solutions was founded 15 years ago, and over that period of time since the inception 12 years ago, Mission Control has grown from a fledgling project management solution to a full-fledged professional services automation solution. We're headquartered in Australia, and we've got our teams in both Australia and North America. So why Mission Control? Well, as I mentioned, Mission Control is built natively on Salesforce. So if you're using Salesforce, Mission Control will be installed into your instance, into your org, and it gives you all those security controls, the platform capabilities, and controls over who gets to access what. Works out of the box. That is an amazing, massive claim and 100% true. Everything you see in our demos of Mission Control is capability that is there with the product. We don't have different tiers or separate modules that you have to pay extra for. The per user license pricing and licensing actually gives you access to 100% of Mission Control, which means as we bring out new features, you get access to that as well. Salesforce configuration. So Salesforce competent admin can administer and even implement Mission Control. It's been designed so it can be implemented either by ourselves, our professional services team, by Salesforce systems integration partners, but also by your own internal Salesforce admins. We provide all the documentation for that. There's a lot of documentation around user guides, knowledge base, lots of recordings around training and those areas. We have global user support both in Australia and North America, and extremely high KPIs for responsiveness and resolution. So you'll find you get very good support with Mission Control. Key impacts of Mission Control. We had an independent consulting company interview a number of Mission Control customers in 2022, and the results that came out of that was quite astounding. So what were the impacts on Mission Control to their business? They actually opened up their P&Ls, their business statements to say, well, before Mission Control, we had this situation, but with the investment in Mission Control, we actually got a very swift ROI, and we're able to grow the business, manage more projects, get more visibility, reduce overheads, reduce administration, as it were. So that's available on our website. Happy to get into that. I've talked about being native to Salesforce. So certainly any level of Salesforce license, from certainly to Lightning Platform Starter and up. And the benefit to you as a Salesforce customer or someone who's looking at Salesforce is the ability to actually administer, maintain, and configure. So creating your own custom fields, hiding, showing fields on page layouts, applying Salesforce business logic, maybe things such as validation rules, workflow rules for I think we've got Process Builder. It's probably been sunset, but Salesforce flows, triggers, what have you. And also your reports and dashboards are using Salesforce reports and dashboards. So you're actually leveraging about 50 different Mission Control out-of-the-box Salesforce reports, and you can certainly build out your own. So people ask about, oh, does your system integrate with Salesforce? Well, there's no integration required because when you install it, it's automatically integrated. And you literally, it takes a click to download on Salesforce App Exchange. You can do a 14-day free trial today into one of your Salesforce orgs, and it's ready to run very, very quickly. And so, of course, if you're using Salesforce today, the UI is going to be very familiar. And there's still some people around with Salesforce Classic. That's where we started. So our Lightning Web components are still supported on Salesforce Classic. So don't be too concerned if you're still there. On that business and economic impact report, just a few more findings there. Yeah, and a 10% increase in revenue is quite astounding. And I think being able to combine a lot of those factors, increase in revenue, increase in profit, increase in utilization, all those factors in all those areas factor into amazing benefits for businesses. On top of that, not just with amazing support, but feedback overall on mission control. So if you go to Salesforce App Exchange or G2 per example here, you'll find there's a lot of positive reviews on mission control. So Net Promoter Score, NPS, is based on a number of positive, negative, and neutral reviews, and 81 is probably one of the highest Net Promoter Scores I've seen for a SaaS company or software company. You'll see from the top right that almost 90% of our clients are up and running in less than a month. So if you look at the capabilities of mission control, that itself is quite astounding for the depth and breadth of what the solution offers and being able to get it up and running for your business very, very quickly. Certainly from a customer success perspective, that's why we won APAC Partner of the Year for Customer Success in 2023, because of that extremely responsive and positive feedback we've had from our support. What sort of industries and customers use mission control? Well, a bit of a who's who across the industry. So yes, professional services, consulting companies would be a very good fit. And you also find mission controls a fit across other industries. We've got a number of construction engineering type companies that still need to manage projects. We look at across different industries here. Certainly, I think there's about 7 or 8 of those logos are Australia and New Zealand based. So they're not just for Australia, they're also global, and it works for anywhere from small business right up to enterprise, or even divisions of enterprise where we have some very good use cases. Speaking of use cases, Brands, which was the logo at the top left, one of the key results they got in their first year is saving their project managers about 4 man days per month. So every project manager was doing everything manually. Everyone was living in spreadsheets. They brought everyone in the business into Salesforce and Mission Control. And they said the biggest saving was the project managers went for spending 4 days a month getting reports to everything was automated. And then looking back retrospectively over the use of Mission Control, they said the increase in efficiency has been an amazing result for them. They haven't had to hire any more people. They've been able to deliver more projects. So what's in Mission Control? Well, we're going to be focusing on Waterfall and Agile, but for those who are new to Mission Control, it's probably important to understand how it's all tied together. So a resource, as we call it in Mission Control, a role, is where you're going to assign a piece of work, whether it's to a person, to a placeholder, to an asset. It could be something like a piece of equipment, a meeting room. And those can come, if you're doing billable type work, they can carry cost rates and billing rates. And there's lots of other ways to do rates as well. You can group those roles into teams. So for allocation, when you're searching for people, I need someone in a certain location or a certain capability, maybe someone from the consulting team, someone from the Sydney consulting team, and building out a skills matrix. So when you're looking for capability, obviously in small business, people tend to know what people's capability is. But as you grow, and certainly in larger business, being able to find that information quickly as you're searching for a resource by their skill, perhaps by their team assignment, and by their availability. And the scheduler helps with the deep dive. There's some of the things I'll be showing today, such as a resource assignment wizard. We've also got an auto assignment wizard, and being able to look retrospectively back on that from role utilization, and also look at full holiday management. So you can actually have full holiday management in Mission Control, full holiday accruals. Very great for when people are applying for time and logging at one place, shows that visibility. If you are using an HRMS, you can certainly bring that into Mission Control. Project management, you can initiate projects from out of the box from Salesforce Opportunity. We also have what's called a project request object. So you might want to generate a project from another object, a case or an account, or maybe a custom object. We might want to build into automation so people fill out a form and use that project request to create the project for them. Of course, typically, not many people build projects out from scratch, although it's quite straightforward with mission control. So you can clone projects. You can actually clone a milestone from another project and bring it in, or build out those milestones as well. And this is where we get to that management style. We're going to be talking about Agile and Waterfall shortly, but one of the key values of mission control is it manages pretty much every style of project: Agile, Waterfall, Scrum, what have you, combinations, and giving you those different views. So, a Kanban board to make it easy for people to work on actions, a Gantt chart for visibility, certainly for dependencies and all that side of things. And I'll see, the critical path, managing those risks and issues, and looking back with retrospectives and getting lessons learned, which can be extremely powerful. Time tracking. There's about 8 places in mission control you log time, because there might be one place you might like working in the whiteboard of the Kanban view and don't want to have to always go out to the timesheet to log time. You could do all your work from the timesheet, including marking time off. You could do it from the Gantt chart. So it really comes down to personal preference, including mobile time logger on the Salesforce One mobile app. Built-in approvals. So if you want to have approvals by your project managers, line managers, you can do that by project. And of course, full project financials. So if you're looking at billing for your projects, you can certainly do that with multiple styles of billing and carry that through to a billing event, which then can integrate to your finance system. You can also look at the costing. So whether you're costing against a billable project or even costing internal projects, it's got all that mechanism in place to do that. As well as full program management. So program management from building out requirements, user stories, storyboard, and the project builder, but also the fact that above a project, you have programs, and above that, you have portfolio. So if you actually need to roll up or be able to group your projects, you can do that right up to a portfolio level, and all the capabilities that come with that. From a collaboration perspective, we're built natively on Salesforce, so you've got access to chatter all the way through the project, all the way through the system. And certainly internal things such as meeting manage, which I'll show briefly on the Agile project, being able to sort of keep all your meeting notes and schedules and agendas and everything inside the one system. And then status reports, getting status reports updates out to your key stakeholders, internal and external, as well as a customer read-only page. So a URL link with the key information for people that maybe don't have access to a login and prefer having a live access URL rather than a PDF. And all the different productivity tools that we go through. So please feel free to ask any questions. So good to see a great showing on the webinar, and just covering 2 aspects. So waterfall projects, we're going to look at things such as the work breakdown structure, dependencies, critical path. We can talk the baselines and those aspects. And then certainly if there's any other questions that come along through the session, happy to sort of drill into those as appropriate, or maybe take them as follow-up notes. So please don't hesitate to ask questions. And then when we get into agile planning for projects, we're going to go through the new sprint board, which just came in our January release. So right through from sprint planning, gathering your team, looking at assigning that backlog into the sprints, and then being able to analyze those sprints by burn down, velocity, what have you. So time to demo. So I'm going to start off with a waterfall project. And from waterfall project, let me just jump into my demo org. And just before I do that, sorry, I should correct myself there. I just want to cover off a couple of fundamentals. So what I'm going to be doing is actually covering first off waterfall projects, and then we'll be going to agile project management with the sprint board. And from a mission control fundamentals perspective, for those who are fresh to mission control, are not familiar with it, you might start your journey in the console. Now, the console is a gathering of wizards of the most typical things that people want to do, and that's not the Harry Potter style, that's certainly the IT type style wizards. From creating a project, of course, copying a project you've worked on before, which I mentioned earlier, being able to create a program to group all your projects to roll up, and then a role. So role, as I mentioned, can be a person who has a license to Mission Control and Salesforce and logs in and accesses. Could be a customer role where they don't have access, but you can still create a role to assign them to a project. So you can at least send them email notifications and you can see where they are on the project. Could be a placeholder. So I'll show some examples of that as you're building out templates and projects, very useful capability, as well as perhaps something like an asset. So I use the example of a projector or a piece of equipment, machinery, meeting room, what have you. You can group your roles into teams, and those teams, you can be a member of a number of teams with one master team. So your master team might be consulting, but you could also be in the Australia team, you could be in the Sydney team, you could be at the internal employees team. It really comes down to how you're going to be searching for resources. So you might have requirements where I need someone who's internal, who's based in Sydney for this client. Building out a skills matrix, a skills library of capability levels, proficiency levels, and being able to assign those to people. So when you're actually searching, not just by person, by team, but also perhaps the skill that's required to deliver that. And behind those skills is actually a skill development plan as well. So as you do your annual reviews, what have you, you can work through that. I'll touch on holidays and holiday allowances. So holiday allowances, doing that full holiday accrual and being able to then request and get approvals for holiday. And then new holidays, obviously building out those holidays for the year for each region, public holidays. So certainly between Victoria and New South Wales, Queensland, and the other states, there are different public holidays. A lot more we cover. I'm not going to go in everything in detail, but if we look at the progress pad, this is where you're actually marking work and progressing it, as the name intimates. So the whiteboard, a Kanban view, which we'll touch on. If you log in time, you can certainly log through the timesheet. You can actually do all your work from the timesheet. The action pad, showing the actions in a list type view, and then being able to manage risks and issues and other areas. Checklists are a layer below actions, so we'll see that in our structure next. And retrospectives, so being able to run retrospectives on your projects, either as they're running or also as they complete, to see what were the lessons learned, what can we do better next time. And then from a management pad, you may not give all these pads access to all these pads to everyone. You can deep dive into various areas, including going to specific Gantt charts, what have you. Lastly, for the admins on the call, the control pad is where you actually administer the system-wide settings for mission control. And if you're thinking about doing a trial, it's this nifty little setting down called create sample data. So you don't even have to build out the data if you just want to test some of the functionality in mission control. Download it for a trial into your org, and you can create that sample data. Okay, last two things we'll cover off is, what's the end game? Where are you going to end up with mission control? If you're looking at allocating roles by availability and what have you, then you're going to end up with the resource planner. And the resource planner gives you an overview across all your different, the actions where people are assigned to projects, and also forecasts where we've maybe got forecasts coming from a project for additional work or from an opportunity, and just helps us with looking at that capacity. Now I'm looking from the beginning of this week till pretty much the last week in April, running into May. I can see straight away it looked like Alana is very busy. The rest of the team, not so much, apart from Bethany. On the planner side, I can get a more granular view. So I'm looking at this from now's perspective. You might prefer, what's the cost or the billable value? And I can look at that on days, weeks, or months. And the value of this is I can see Alana's really busy around the end of March, start of April. What is it that's keeping her so busy? I can see the breakdown of billable or external time, non-billable or internal time, any holidays she's got. And I can see all the projects and where that work is allocated. If I scroll down a little, I'll see the culprit is a forecast that's come from an opportunity. So that's supposed to start next week. So I'd probably be wanting to speak to the person who's got that role forecast for Alana and saying, we'll either need to reassign Alana to other work to make that happen, or find another resource that's more appropriate. Being able to then manage those resources at scheduling at a more granular level, then you can look at things such as the scheduler. So the resource scheduler, we look at it similar to the resource planner. I can see people's capacity. I can see with the heading capacity, or for Mick down here, I can see his overcapacity. I see the weekends are grayed out, and I can see everyone's pretty much got Friday off, plus Lane's got an extra couple of days, and then Bethany's also got the Monday, so that makes it easy. I can drill right down to the actions where they're allocated on the project, and I can see what that work is. So, for example, I can see here Lana had work Monday, Tuesday on ACE Enterprise build, and I see what's taking her capacity. Now, if I needed to reassign, reschedule, assign that to other people, that's very, very straightforward. So let's have a look at some waterfall projects. And I go through the work breakdown structure. I'll talk about phases, milestones, actions, checklists. We'll look at the Gantt chart, action pad, and Kanban view. So I've got a project that's actually come from an opportunity. So the opportunity closed, we used a template to create the project. And while I'm in a Salesforce opportunity, I'm not having to leave the system to go to my project. So I'm going to the project that was created. This one had a bit of a template. And my default when I come in, I'm going to look at the overview, the work breakdown structure. So if I look at that work breakdown structure, my project actually has pretty much all the features of mission control. I've got phases, which are optional, milestones. Under my milestones, I've got the actions. The actions is where we're assigning the work, we're assigning the hours, and I've also got an additional layer under that of checklist items, where I can also assign the work and also dictate hours if I want to do it at that level. You'll see there's a lot of alerts here saying this work should have already started. So from this sort of perspective, a number of ways I can get this resource pretty quickly, and we'll look at that in a sec, but let's have a look at what do those actions look like from a Gantt chart perspective. So probably one of the most powerful things about mission control, you don't have to build the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart builds as you build out the project. And in my example here, from a template, I've got some simple dependencies from planning to design. You'll see I've actually selected the item here to say I want to show predecessors. So I can see those predecessors. We'll see that this is dependent on follow to start plus 1 day. So you've got your typical dependencies like follow to start, start to start, finish, finish to finish, what have you. So if I look here, I've got my dependency, planning to design. I've got multiple dependencies going down to prepare and gather needs to finish at the same time as prepare. So, and I can also see it's in red, so it's showing me that's the critical path. If I had multiple sequences within my project, I could have different milestones finishing in different orders, and maybe the milestone work's not dependent on each other, or it also could be. If you want to have dependencies out to external projects, you can certainly do that too. So, little feature here, which I mean, I've actually made some changes. So while I was setting up this project, I'd actually started it on Wednesday, and I've actually pushed it out to today. So straight away from a visual perspective, I can see this is where the project was originally. So from a baseline variance, I've actually gone over by 2 days. So I'm actually -2 as it were. Those metrics are actually tracked automatically within the project as well. So, but from a visual perspective, that's really powerful. There's a lightning bolt you might notice up here. It's green at the moment. And what that is, that allows me to auto schedule. So say, for example, I'm looking at the plan here. We're studying through, and I think, look, it's too early to start the design next week on Monday. Maybe I'll push that to Tuesday or Wednesday. Now, with my dependencies and auto schedule, what's going to happen? It's actually going to push the rest of the project out to the next available days. It's ignoring the blocked out days for the weekend. If I had people assigned already, it would block out any holidays they had, so I wouldn't schedule over that. I'm going to put the next available working day. And I can bring that back again and it re-toggles. Now, if I switch that off, say I actually want to push this out by a day, but I don't want to impact the rest of the project, then I can do that, hit save, and then switch it back on so it does toggle. So you've got a lot of control over that in the Gantt chart view. I mentioned there's multiple ways to log time. And one of those things is there's a time icon. You might see it very small here. I could actually, if I was logging time to the project, this is one of the many places I could actually do it. So the pop-up time modal will come up there. So just double checking things we're going to cover. So I've covered off phases, milestone actions, checklist, Gantt chart. And while we're looking at the overview, and if there's any questions on the Gantt chart, please fire away. While we're looking at the overview, that's great. Now, all the green items are my project actions. Actually, I'm just going to quickly show two features. One is maybe I need a consultant quickly, so I could actually use the resource assignment wizard. Our project actually has the team and a skill determined here, and I can say, give me a search based on the skills, the team, and availability, and who are the best people. So it looks like at the moment, Alana will be the first person. I could assign her to that quite quickly. And if I want multiple people working on that, I could do that too. Recently new is the auto assignment. Now, because my actions have skills and teams assigned to them, if I look at the auto assignment, it's a very quick way to say, I'd like to get a recommendation based on the skill, based on other criteria, their capacity, how long they've had that skill. Give me a recommendation, and I'll choose from that who the best people for the project may be. So typically something that takes a lot of time for project managers to hunt down who are the right people, how are we actually going to get that information, and held in many places. So I'm pretty happy. We'll get Alana to that. Mick, I've already decided is going to be the project manager. Joel's going to help on the design. Chris is great on the development. And then Alana, we'll get her to do the training as well. So when I do that, that's updated to the project. Where you want notifications, everyone will get notifications on that. If I just hit refresh on the overview, you'll see we've got those people assigned. Now, one of the things I talked about in the Gantt chart was really powerful, not just for waterfall projects, but extremely useful in waterfall, is not having to leave the Gantt chart. If I'd chosen to say I want to push this to Friday, to tomorrow, I can see that it's already blocked out. So I can see that people are not available. So it looks like the same thing if our project pushes out. We've got time happening in April when people aren't available. So without having to go and look at calendars and other areas, that is a massive time saver for people. So the Gantt chart, the overview. Now the action pad I did mention before, sort of like a list view, where you can work on your actions. You can see how many are there. There's none overdue. How many have we progressed? The hours scheduled remaining, any checklists, which I can see there. And if you're not logging time, well, even if you are, you can actually mark these off as you complete. So nice. Some people prefer tick lists. There is a login time icon here, so you could log time as you go. And for this action, we've also got a couple of checklist items. So we could mark those off here. There's always flexible ways to work with mission control. So exactly the same information we saw in the work breakdown structure and the Gantt chart, and here in the action pad, in the Kanban view, in the whiteboard. So there we can see, okay, I'm going to drag that to in progress. I can see that Alana is assigned to this. I can go to chatter. I can manage those checklist items. I can raise an issue. I can log time. I can see a lot of the aspects around the project. I've got 4 hours and 2 checklist items. Haven't logged any time yet. And we're 0% complete. And there's a progress bar. And I've got that alert saying you should have started on this already. Being able to get to that granular level, you might want to work on the checklists individually as well. So it's like, okay, well, let's confirm those requirements. So making it very flexible and easy to work with. So certainly working with waterfall projects gives you a lot of capability. Certainly on the overview, you can also see how you're tracking from an hours perspective and any highlights, any alerts. No questions on that. We might just get into Agile project management and the sprint board. So let me just close this tab and let's go and have a look at our Agile project. So similar implementation project. And again, I'm working, landing in the overview. If we scroll down, we can see that work breakdown structure. So my structure, what I've got is typical Agile. I've got project management at the top, and I've got backlog, sprint 1, and sprint 2. And then I can see I've got a bunch of actions that are included in here. So I've got admin, I've got stand-up meetings, and in my backlog, features that I want to implement and deliver as part of implementing mission control. Looks like sprint 1's already started. I can see I've got some hours allocated and some time logged, and I haven't actually allocated anything out to sprint 2. So what's different about managing that in mission control? Well, if we look at our sprint 1 milestone, so this example here, I've just opened that up in a new tab. Anyone who's familiar with mission control say, yeah, I'm used to seeing a page layouts. What we've added is a sprint board. And in the sprint board, we've determined this is a sprint milestone. This is the start date. This is the end date. And that's going to make it easy to actually work through and allocate those actions as we go. From the capacity chart, we can see how far through we are, what's left to do, where those allocations are, and how much is remaining. It looks like our tester hasn't started yet. It's probably waiting on the developer to finish. And I can see the capacity from a role perspective. So it looks like I might even have some unassigned work down here. So sort of things that make it easy to pick up on. Now, as far as your sprint team, you can allocate those individually. You can load the roles from a team, like from the developers, consultants, what have you, or you can build out your own team. For this example, I'll show you, we'll actually go and add that row by row. So as I've got these people allocated, what it's actually also going to show me is what are their existing allocations. So not just for the work on this project, but if we have a look at Mick's example, I can see the other project Mick's working on and any holidays he's got booked in the period. So that's really useful, having that all in one place without having to go out to separate places. So I'm probably, seeing in my mind the nodding of heads of like, oh yeah, I've got to find this in many different places. Now from the backlog, we've assigned some of those actions into the sprint one, and we can see the hours allocated and the people. So how does that look to create it? So let's go and have a look at sprint number 2. So sprint number 2, we haven't actually built that out. And there's a couple of places you can do that, but it's kind of handy to do it here at the sprint level. I'm going to say the sprint's going to finish when sprint 1 completes. So we'll put that down as the 11th. And once I do that, you'll see there's no boards or anything here. Then it'll actually start loading a lot of that information for us. So that's really handy. So we've got all that information down here and capacity, and I can build out my sprint team now. So perhaps I'll add them row by row, or what I could do is load the roles. Now I might choose from a team like such as developers consulting. Maybe I'll just take them from sprint 1. So I do want to use the same team in my example. So what that's going to do is load those roles in super quickly, shows their capacity, shows their existing allocations, and then I can start actually looking at bringing that information in. So let's just bring in, I might just bring in 3 more of those. And then I can look at that sort of setup. So I've got my hours. So I've already scoped out the hours for here. If you hadn't, of course, you can scope that out as part of the sprint. And let's look at some people to do this. Now, I'm just going to use the people from my sprint here. So use Colin, use Chris, and let's just hit save to see how that looks. Now, part of that, as we build that out as well, as part of managing the project, you'll see, oh, let's just hit save. There we go. Fantastic. Let's try that again. That's my bad. Let's just try that one more time. Always has to happen during the demo, doesn't it? Okay, so we've got that information. We'll hit save. And okay, hey presto, we've got all that information updated. And that's saying I need to save as well, so I'm just going to make sure that's there. Those little alerts are really useful. And then we can go and have a look at our access. So certainly, you might say I'm going to start working on control pad. Now, so far as the icons and everything in there, if you need to get into the action summary, you might be building out action notes. You could have your user stories put in here, so you can start, go and enter and update your user stories. If you've got requirements, we also have requirements and mission control, and they could be attached to the project, and you can base those user stories from those requirements. So it sort of really does build that out. So from that perspective, in the whiteboard, I think we had a couple of checklists in there as well. That might have been in sprint 1. We can go back to that. and also the retro board. So I've been able to build out retrospectives. So what worked well, what needs improvement, what try next time. So when you're actually looking at starting projects, you can review those lessons learned from previous projects. You're not having to sort of start from scratch, as it were. And the sprint analytics. So one of the things that is hard to track for a lot of agile projects is all the hours burned. It's what's being completed. So I can see here of the 4 actions I brought into the sprint, they're not completed yet. I haven't logged any time by them, as it were. I can see velocity. I'll be able to track as that goes through. So if we actually go back to sprint 1, we'll be able to look at that in a bit more detail. So looking under sprint 1, we can see holiday allowances has started. We can see there's been 6 of the 16 hours logged. We can see the progress bar. I think at the checklist board, we didn't have a couple of items. But then on the sprint analytics, you'll see there's actually, there's more data in here. Now, if you're concerned that there's not a lot of screen space to this, there is a whiteboard that's standalone in Mission Control. So you can certainly, with the whiteboard, with the action pad, with the Gantt chart, you could bring that out. It's very simple just to add a filter. And we'll just say new filter, and we'll just say project be Agile implementation. Just show me all the actions for that. So from here, I'll be able to get a really great view of everything that's happening. I can see where I've got people assigned and not yet assigned, even down to being able to look at it from the milestone view, say what's in backlog, what's in sprint 1 and 2. And you may notice back on the sprint, sorry if I'm jumping around, I've got everything in progress. Might say, hours allocated billable. And there's all sorts of metrics you'll be able to check on there. So that's a lot to cover. There is a lot more we can do from a capability perspective. And certainly, if you need to get a bit more information, happy to sort of jump in and share that with you. So how do we support you? What's the next steps? If you're looking fresh at Mission Control, then happy to sort of set up a discovery, what we call a discovery, to gather your requirements to see if Mission Control is the right fit for you. And from that, we'll tailor a solution demonstration. And if you choose to then adopt, come on board with Mission Control, then we've got a full onboarding process as well, whether we implement, you self-implement, you're implemented through a partner. We provide all that information as well as an onboarding plan to make sure that you're successful. Our customer success team's available to answer any support questions, and they run monthly campfire, what we call campfire sessions, which are recorded, which focus on specific features of Mission Control. And not only is there a user guide, there's actually a searchable knowledge base on all of the key features. If you come on board as a customer, obviously, or when you come on board as a customer, we have periodic health checks just to make sure you're getting the most out of Mission Control. It's working as you originally intended. 3 major releases a year. And as far as self-service and training, you'll go to our website, aprika.com. That's aprika.com. Under the resources, you'll find a lot of great information, as well as under learning, those Cosmo Campfire webinars, as well as a learning portal. So you can self-register for that and actually go through module by module and train yourself on Mission Control. A lot of great information available on our website, including that business impact report. There's ebook downloads, the brochure feature, all the capabilities. And certainly if you want to go to Salesforce App Exchange, there's also, and it's probably hard to see, if you go to Salesforce App Exchange, there's 2 things. You can watch a little overview demo of Mission Control. There's also a live test drive account. So the test drive account is actually a central account that anyone can access with their Trailblazer login, and you can use, go through and look at some of the standard features of Mission Control. If you like to download it into your own Salesforce instance, then simply click on the Get It Now button. Make sure you've got the Trailblazer login that aligns to that instance, and that takes a matter of minutes to download. The quick start guide, which is available, will be there. Once you do download it, we'll also email you with the implementation guide, and we're available to support you through that process. Any last questions before we wrap up the webinar? And that's either a stunned silence where people haven't figured out how to use the Q&A. But this recording will be shared, so for those who are still on the session, you'll receive this in the next couple of days, and it will go up on our website as well, probably by early next week, so under that webinar, pre-recorded. Thank you so much for your time. My name's Trevor Dornbos. I'm based here in Sydney, Australia. If you have any questions, my email is there, trevor.dornbos@aprika.com.au, and happy to jump on the call, answer any questions, whether you're a current customer of ours or you're looking at evaluating mission control. Thank you all, and thank you for your time.